Hi, welcome back to the Story By Podcast. Thanks for stopping by. It is time to kick off Season 2. I want to start with a special shout out to Nalani Proctor, Eastern Iowa singer-songwriter, for the new theme song. She's a multi-talented performer who can be found around the Midwest performing solo, as well as with the 80s-inspired retro-wave synthwave duo, Finally Some Action. I encourage you to catch her live if you have a chance. You can find her at nalaniproctor.com and various other social media places that I'll link to in the show notes. I thought about doing a romantic story to kick things off, since this episode drops around Valentine's Day. But it always seems like everyone's doing lovey-dovey shows for the holiday, and I know plenty of people who treat February 14th like any regular day. So, I decided to go with Mama Was A Waitress. It's not exactly a love story, but the two leads have an interesting connection. I mean, maybe it could have been the meet cute at the beginning of a longer romantic story, but like one that features... You know what? Why don't I just get to the story? That's why you're here. I'll tell you more about it afterwards, if you want to stick around. Mama Was a Waitress. Mary noticed the guy as soon as he walked into the diner. She noticed everyone who came in, sized him up, speculated on the probable tip. The newcomer looked kind of cute with a square jaw, hair in need of a trim, and a hint of beard shadow. But, combined with a wrinkled denim jacket, faded t-shirt and jeans, and a pair of tattered all-stars, he looked a little scruffy. Mary figured him for a glass of water and a couple pieces of toast. The guy passed by the early morning regulars who all sat in their own booth-wrapped worlds, eating breakfast, drinking coffee, and shooting the breeze. He sat at the counter, shuffled through the newspaper on the counter, and pulled out a section. He folded it, pulled a pen from his jacket pocket, and started working on the crossword puzzle. "Mary, order up," Bruno bellowed from the kitchen. Mary headed for the order window, slid the plates onto a tray, grabbed a coffee pot, and headed for the banker booth. The trio of slick-suited sleazeballs sat in the same booth every morning and every noontime, and they were hell on the girls. That's why Mary always made sure she was the one who dealt with them. She set the coffee pot on the table and dealt their plates like cards. Double stack, eggs, bacon, steak and eggs rare, home fries, Denver omelet, hash browns. She topped off their cups and said, "Anything else I can get for you?" Junior Gentry, bank VP, and the one with the slimiest hands, bellowed, "How about a side order of you, sweet britches?" "Maybe some other time," she replied. "No better time than the present," Junior roared. "Yeah," Denny Simmons, loan officer, weasel on two legs, and champion ass-kisser, said. "Junior'd like a present." Mary was not in the mood today. "Why, Mr. Gentry," Mary said loudly enough for the beautician 2 doors down to hear, "I'm so glad to hear Mrs. Gentry is recovering from the cancer. I know all that praying you're doing for her is just working miracles." Junior reddened and fell silent. Denny Simmons looked down at his plate. Ricky Drummond, the third banker, and, far as Mary could tell, the only one with manners, restrained a laugh. "Nothing else, then?" Mary said. When they remained silent, she walked away. Mary parked her tray by the order window, grabbed a fresh pot of coffee, and headed over to the new guy. He glanced up from the paper as she flipped his cup and poured coffee into it. "Welcome to Hometown Diner. My name's Mary." "Pleased to meet you, Mary. I'm Jack." "You know what you want, or you need a minute?" "The breakfast plate." "Eggs?" "Scrambled, please. Wheat toast, no jelly. Sausage patties, not links, if you have them." Mary nodded. "Anything else?" "That should do it, thank you." They both turned at the sound of raised voices at the banker booth, and saw Junior, red-faced and steaming, throw his breakfast at Denny and Ricky. "There goes your tip," Jack said. "Outside this diner, I doubt he'd give me the time of day," Mary replied. "In here, I'm just a dumb slut with a name tag who should be grateful to let him fuck me." "Pardon my German." "Pardoned. Rough night?" Mary smiled. "Oh, you're one of those listeners. Gonna get up my little waitress skirt by pretending you care how I feel?" Jack shook his head. "I don't care how you feel. Just checking to see if I was right." Mary cocked her head, said, "About what?" "You," Jack replied. "Cranky this early. You either had a double shift, someone called in, or you got a kid that didn't sleep." "Go on." Jack shrugged, said, "Place just opened, so even if you worked till close, you were off by 10-ish last night. There's 2 other girls taking orders." "Maybe I went out with one of them charmers over there and stayed out all night long." Bruno bellowed from the back, "Mary, order up! Quit flirting!" Mary zipped back to the order window, clipped Jack's order to the spinner, grabbed the waiting order, and headed to a booth to deliver it. Jack resumed working on the newspaper crossword puzzle. A moment later, a perky teen appeared beside Jack. She wore the official hometown diner waitress outfit, though the buttons of her blouse seemed taxed by her ample bust. "Hi, I'm Bevy. What can I do for you?" Mary appeared on the other side of Jack, said, "You can get Mr. Frink over in 3 his juice, Bevy." With a pout, Bevy bounced away. "Sick kid," Mary said. "She looks pretty healthy to me," Jack replied with a crooked grin. "My daughter's sick, Sherlock. She was up all night fevering and coughing. That's why I got no patience for the fancy pants digits." "What's her doctor say?" "Payday's day after tomorrow," Mary sighed. "I can do it after that. Your order's up." Mary zipped away to grab Jack's food. As she headed back, Junior Gentry rose to pay his bill and clipped Mary's tray. Jack's breakfast plate hit the floor in an explosion of cheap ceramic, eggs, and sausage. "Watch it, you clumsy bitch!" Junior bellowed before stomping to the counter to pay his bill. Denny and Ricky followed behind, laughing. Mary sighed, knelt to pick up the mess. A moment later, Jack appeared beside Mary with the broom and dustpan from behind the counter, and proceeded to help her clean up. "First a nosy detective, now a knight in shining armor," Mary said as they finished. "My mama was a waitress," Jack replied. "Well, she was lots of things over the years, but mostly a waitress. She worked a lot trying to take care of my brother and me." They walked back toward his seat at the counter. "We used to spend a lot of time in places like this after school. Did homework and waited for her shift to end. Saw a lot of guys talk to her the way the banker talked to you. Didn't like it then. Don't like it now." He sat, picked up his newspaper, and took a sip of coffee. Mary headed back to the order window to get a replacement for Jack's meal. Then she grabbed a coffee pot and made the rounds, topping off cups. 3 tables along, something occurred to her. "Wait a minute," Mary said aloud, then stomped over to Jack. "How'd you know Junior was a banker?" Jack looked up. "What?" "You said you saw a lot of guys talk to your mother like that banker talked to me." "I was running an errand before I stopped in. I saw them come across the street from farmers and merchants." "Mary, order up," Bruno bellowed. Mary zipped away, grabbed the plates, dealt them, then she got busy with other customers. While she buzzed around, she saw Bevy had parked herself beside Jack again. Mary headed toward them, then Bruno hollered, "Mary, your boyfriend's replacement order's ready." Mary veered back to the window, grabbed the order. "That's out of your tips," Bruno grumbled. "Be careful this time." Mary gritted her teeth and headed back toward Jack. Bevy glanced up from her conversation with Jack, saw Mary approaching, and darted away. "Here's your order," Mary said. "Thanks," Jack replied. "Sorry about the trouble." "Not your fault," Mary said. "Anything else?" "Not for me," Jack said. "You could take 5 and get your feet up." "Gotta hustle," Mary replied and turned to go. "Bevy will cover for you," Jack said. "Take a couple." "How'd you swing that?" Mary asked, sitting on the stool next to Jack's. "I just told her you were having a rough day, and that I'd appreciate it if she could handle things for a few minutes." "That's it?" Jack shrugged, cut his sausage patty, said, "How long you been here?" and took a bite. "Forever," Mary said with a mirthless laugh, then continued, "Since high school. I was saving up for a car so I could get the hell out of here. But then I met Pete." "Your husband?" Jack asked, then ate another forkful of breakfast. "Never got that far. He was a talker, a charmer." Mary sighed, said, "Pete was sitting at the same counter, just talking, being nice. He asked me out, there was more talking. Then lots and lots of not talking. Next thing, I got a baby, and Pete's got a ticket to somewhere out west." "Sorry," Jack said, and Mary thought maybe he actually meant it. "Well, I appreciate the break," Mary said, "but I better get back to it." She handed Jack his check. "You pay at the counter," she said, and headed back to do more rounds of coffee. Jack ate the rest of his meal, occasionally writing in the crossword. When he finished, he folded up the newspaper section he'd been working on, tucked it under his arm, and moseyed up to the register. Mary, en route back to get another carafe of coffee, swung by to ring Jack up. "That'll be $7.67. Jack dug around in his pockets and came up with a crumpled mess of ones. "When do you get off work?" he asked her. Mary said, "I thought I reminded you of your mama." You're prettier." Despite herself, Mary smiled, then said, "And from the look of those bills, I bet you've got a ticket to somewhere out west, too." "No, thanks." Jack counted out his cash, reddened, and said, "I've only got $8. That doesn't leave you much of a tip." "Probably still better than I got from them bank fellas. Don't worry about it. You help me clean up." Jack looked across the street. "How about I go across to the bank, get some cash, and bring you back a better tip?" "Knock yourself out, hon," Mary said. "Mary, orders up. Get his number and get back to slinging plates," Bruno howled from the back. Mary headed back, and Jack headed out. The teller in Farmers and Merchants nodded her head at the scruffy guy in line to indicate she would deign to speak to him. "How may I help you?" she said in a voice that made her children shiver. "I'd like to make a withdrawal," the guy said, gesturing with his eyes for her to look down. He shifted the newspaper section that concealed a compact, stainless pistol. The teller took a breath. "If you scream," the guy said, "I may get caught, but you'll be dead. Think really hard about what comes out of your mouth next." "How much would you like to withdraw?" she said. Bevy stood at the register ringing up a customer when Mary approached her. "Bevy, I'm going to grab a smoke. You okay for a few minutes?" "Sure, hon." Mary headed toward the alley door, pulling a cigarette pack from her apron. Bevy gave the customer his change, a wink and a smile. Then she remembered the envelope under the counter. "Oh, Mary, wait!" Mary stopped, turned back to Bevy. Bevy pulled the envelope out and waved it around. "Your boyfriend left you a love note," Bevy said in a sing-song lilt. "Boyfriend?" Mary said as Bevy handed her the envelope. "That cute guy you were all over earlier." "Jack?" "Yeah," Bevy said. "Jack." Mary tucked the envelope into the pocket of her apron and resumed her trip out to the alley. Once there, she sat down in a milk crate, pulled out a cigarette, lit it, then pulled out the envelope. She opened it and withdrew a folded piece of paper. "Mary, I was never good with math. Hope this is a good tip. Maybe take your daughter to the doctor today, when you get off work. Jack." Mary looked into the envelope and saw a $100 bill. Her breath caught. She counted out 19 more $100 bills and began to cry. A few days later, in a different diner, in a different city, Jack sat down at the counter, sifted through a newspaper looking for the crossword. Leah, a sturdy waitress in her 50s, moseyed up, flipped his cup, poured coffee into it. "You know what you want, or you need a minute with the menu?" Jack glanced at Leah's name tag, said, "Bacon cheeseburger, Leah. Drag it through the garden, then toss in a side of onion rings." "Louie'll have that right up." Jack pulled out the crossword section, folded it, and began to work on it. Beside him, on one of the discarded sections of paper, a below-the-fold headline declared, "Lone gunman robs third bank." An inset photo of Junior Gentry was captioned, "Farmers and Merchants VP killed in most recent robbery." Jack chuckled as he answered a 6-letter word for thief with robber. He looked up when he heard a young woman's voice say, "I couldn't do that!" A teenage waitress stood near a table full of laughing men in suits. She held her order pad to her chest like a shield and stepped back as if dodging a physical blow. "Sure you can, sweet cheeks," said the leader of the pack. "You just put your lips together and blow." The girl ran away from the table, tears forming in her eyes. The suit squad all high-fived each other and laughed like drunken frat boys. Leah stood beside Jack, topped off a cup that didn't need filling, and said, "Those dicks come in every day to eat lunch and harass the girls." Jack watched the men, said, "The food that good?" "They all work at the bank around the corner," Leah said. "Charlie, the owner, puts up with it because they hold the paper on this place." "And Charlie is a little slow on the payments," Jack finished. "Yep." "You handle them better than that girl?" Leah snorted. "Honey, I burned through 3 husbands. Nothing they got I ain't seen or heard." Jack nodded, said, "They're from that bank around the corner?" "Yep, the First Central Bank." "That girl that just ran off, what's her name?" "Joy. She's new. First day flying solo." "You take over for Joy, and I'll give you and her a big tip." "Sure, big spender. But what's it to you?" "My mama was a waitress." So that was Mama Was a Waitress. Of the things I've written, it's probably had the weirdest ride. It was originally a short story, then it was a screenplay, but drastically different. That screenplay was a finalist in competition for production, but wasn't produced. Then a revised version was selected and produced as a short film by the Des Moines Area Community College video production class. That screenplay was combined with the original short story and an earlier draft of the screenplay to create the audio story you just heard, which will also soon be available on Amazon Kindle. It's been a busy little story, but I'm glad you took the time to listen to it. If you're feeling generous, please take a couple minutes to rate, review, or just share the show, and as always, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. We'll see you next week on the Story By Podcast.